All right, as developers and people who have some development history, CRUD is a common way to approach our problems with data, getting data into a system, getting data. So we're going to start with CRUD. This hands-on will give you a sense of N8N, how to build APIs, and just all the little details that come with N8N and building things. So by the end of this, we'll have a simple CRUD API for articles, and we'll do some cool stuff towards the end with AI to tag it. And we will also see a little bit about authentication and not much for ACL, but we'll come back to that later. All right, let's dig in. So putting a little note here is nice. I do it a lot. I'll sometimes link to articles about if I'm using a spreadsheet or whatever, I link to it. But let's just add our first CRUD. Our first CRUD will be a webhook. It will be about getting all the articles, okay? And so I'm going to call it articles. And notice the test right there. And we'll have authentication. That'll be our first thing. So we're going to call it header auth. And I made one called course. But let's go look at that really quick. I'm going to click create typically. But on this one, I'm just going to click edit. So I called it course. And this was really hard. It took me how do I rename that? And I hate that. But how do I rename it? I renamed it. Okay. And this is going to be a bearer token, and it's going to be like this. And I like how this guy did this one time. So it's going to be bearer, and we'll just call it foobar for now. Okay. So if you can imagine just pasting that there, that's what's going to be there. And we have a course, and we don't want to return it immediately. So let us do this. We're going to set it for listening, and let's go grab that. And we will be using Postman a lot. So we're going to go get our articles, I think. Yep, there's the API. We're going to do page 1 because we're going to do pagination later on. And it's not active, so let's go make sure I tell testing to listen because we're in testing mode. And then when I run this, it gets it. Oops, authorization is wrong. Okay, so then I'm going to go here and do authorization. We could inherit. I'm just going to put it here for a moment because sometimes I have trouble doing that. And let's go get the one we had and send that. Save. Bear foobar. Oh, sorry. I think it already does it for me. Okay. So now we got our payload that we sent. We will see page in the query. We'll work on pagination after. So what I want to do now is just pin this so we don't have to keep hitting the API. And at this point, we saw auth. And we will break this into 2 because I might come back to pagination after. I want to get through the gist of this first before I get sidetracked by something like that. And so now we want to return results. We want to return them from a database. I'm going to put Postgres here. Now Postgres can be Supabase. It could be Postgres itself. I'm using a non-Supabase Postgres. And I'll explain Supabase later. We'll use it. It's a nice service. You can host your own. So in this case, I'm going to say, hey, connect to our Postgres. What did that look like? I gave it the IP. I gave it the name, the username and password. I'm on that server so I can connect to it, things like that. And the nice thing with N8N is you could typically, when you set up credentials, it will test them out for you. You can see right away if they're working. But that's it. There's no magic there. And because I named it nicely, I can see all my other ones. Okay? So the operation I want to do is select. And I want to grab from the public. Now, N8N, and especially when you use Supabase, there's a private and there's a public. And it's just how just how Postgres works. And then I want to grab it from a table. Now, the table I made, and I could have sworn I made this table. Hopefully I'm on the right database. So I cut out that little adventure there. But basically, I messed up. So when I go to my credentials, I can't connect to the database Postgres. I had to connect to the one I made. The database is called articles. It's going to get worse because I actually called the table articles as well. But we'll have another table in a moment. Let's go do that really quick so we can throw off the confusion. So I'm going to add another table called tags. So let me just go ask, because I don't want to write the schema. And part of working in a way that I'm going to show here is it's just take advantage of these tools. Let it write the schema for me. You could run migrations with certain tools. You could save them and just run them. If you're building a full application, you're probably going to have a framework for some of the migration stuff. So it just depends on the situation. There's a lot of good stuff out there for migrations. So now we want to make that one. I think I ran it already. Okay. Now, when I fixed this, the thing with N8N is sometimes you have to tell it, hey, go look again. So this list would have been empty. But if I just go back to here and go back to public, it's going to refresh this list. So now it should have tags. And it didn't. So let's go see why. We got tags here. Okay. And I'm going to just do this. And I'm going to do this. And then come back to here. And we should see tags, but we don't. Ah, there it is. Again, none of this stuff is perfect. But after all that clicking and seeing, we get tags. We don't want to return all. We're going to just say, hey, pagination is 10. Now we could, just out of curiosity, let's try something. This guy, let's turn it to test mode. And we'll unpin our data. And we're going to say, and limit equals 10. If I could spell limit. 10. So if we were to send that, we now have captured that. And we have our limit. And let's pin that. So we could do this cool thing here where part of our pagination that we'll build later on would have the limit. All right, so we don't have a condition just yet. We're just going to go grab everything that's there, which is nothing. And we will then sort them by title. And I think that will be it. So now we have our webhook, and it does that. And we don't want to do anything else to this particular route that I can think of right now. And I want to return things in a consistent way. Basically, I want to save this for a moment, run it, sorry, and then pin that. Oh, because there's no output. Okay, so because here's a good gotcha. Because there's no output, it won't output anything and move on to the next node. So I'm going to say always output data. And then when I run it now, you'll see this line go to green. So now that's green. And so we know it made it through. And that's just one of those gotchas. Now, the other gotcha is going to be interesting because I want this to be a consistent response, okay? So let's go to here, and we want this to be like this, no matter if there's data or not. So I'm going to save that on my clipboard and come back to that later. All right. So now if we tell our webhook not to respond immediately, but to use the last webhook node, then we do our thing and we do that and we're done. Now I think it will respond with 200. And I think we could, oh yeah, look at it. I could put it into data or response. That's interesting. I don't know if that will give us what we want, but it's a start. And I could say report code 201. I don't think 201 makes sense, but just so you can see. Now if we go back to here, it's still in test mode. So let's go remove that. And I have not made this active, so production will not work. So let's go do that. And then let's send it. All right, so we have our response. I don't like this. We'll deal with this later. But we have a response and we have nothing, empty data. But now let's start returning data. Okay, so when we return data from that database, we need some data in the database to do. So I could probably do something where it creates a bunch of dummy data for me. And just so it looks better than what we're about to do. And again, take advantage of ChatGPT or whatever. Claude's a great one. There's APIs too you can use to do fake JSON, but I'm here, so I might as well use this. And then run all. And this is just Table Plus, by the way. It's just a nice GUI. It's free. You can just use it to do stuff in the database. All right. So now when we query that database, we are going to get results. The results are fine, create app, publish app, but if we didn't want a field there, we could show that as well after. We will take the work to the next level. So as we dig a little deeper, we'll come back to pagination and data shaping or whatever we call it. Let's go put that into the to-do list. One moment. So we have our index. Okay, so we made our first API, and now we want to get into get an article. But we have articles in there. Okay, cool. So now if I was to show that in a UI, it would help that I could show it. Now I don't like this. It's never going to scale because when I say scale, I mean it's not going to work because typically you have data and then pagination in a certain way. Okay, this was bugging me and it's something I wanted to get back to in the course, pagination. But I did a cursor-based pagination when it came down to it. And again, you can do this in code easily because a lot of these libraries and things we use have pagination built in, ORMs, whatever. But to get this down to using ChatGPT or whatever to build queries, to learn a little bit at that level and get it done, it's pretty much rinse and repeat from here, where I can just reuse this over and over again. So we started building this index before, and I never did finish the pagination, so I'm going to insert this video. And basically all we're going to do, let me go to Postman to show it there. So now when you, and this is a known pattern, cursor ID to paginate. So in this case, I'm using an ID, but you could use to base it on the date or whatever. Now, and you could even have if statements. If the sorting is ID, use the cursor ID. If the sorting is date, use the cursor date. You could really work through that. So in this case, when I don't pass a cursor, the system will do a default query, sort descending by ID. It's just getting the latest articles. And then down here, it says next cursor 36. So if I was to put that back and put in 36, it would just go down the list. And then, of course, it depends on my limit. If I set a limit to 5, I haven't really tested this one out, it would just do 5 at a time. And then the cursor would go down by 5 or 6. I forget the number. 5, yeah. Okay, and it wouldn't always go down by 5, like if you deleted an article or something wasn't published. Like it would always go down by 5, but it wouldn't be like ID 36 would then be ID 31. It just depends. That's just because it's dummy data. So it was really easy once it was done. Basically, I just talked to ChatGPT a lot and gave it screenshots, which is great. But back to before, I'm capturing some args just because I wanted to first protect myself. This is a number. People can't do SQL injection. If it's not a number, it's going to fail. And then limit, I just defaulted to 10 because I'm in here. I might as well do it. Then I pass it to N8N, into SQL. I just did a regular query using query parameters to protect myself from SQL injections. But using it here, as I said before, where it's protected beforehand, you couldn't pass a string in here and do a query. That was it. And now it will do this query process we're hoping for. Now, okay, that's not it. Another struggle I had when I was talking and I want to share was because I read the docs. And so everything's looking good. We do this because this is an iterative node. Like I said a moment ago, it wants to do 5 loops, but we can't do loops to respond. So we're basically building up the data. So we're saying, hey, give me all that data and put it into this array data. So now we've aggregated those 5 items into the data array. And then we do a response. Now, I have always done a webhook response, but I have done this before, and I never caught on to I was doing this before. And the webhook response per the docs just, I don't know why it didn't let me do the expression, but it said in the docs, hey, you're probably not going to be able to do this, so use one of these instead. And then when you use a edit field, so this is a edit field, they come in handy a lot. You're able to shape the data in the way that you want it to be shaped. So just like I did over here. So now I respond with that, and I could pass in the fields. I was able to make a pagination object by just using dots. So it's really nice stuff, really good. It's really easy to use. And so once you do that, and once you set the original webhook to not to respond using response webhook, but to respond with the last node finishes. And so now it just works. And so if I go back to here, we still get the results we were getting before, but we have the pagination with the cursor. And then in the cursor, we could go through the process like this. So it's nice. Took me a while when I first did it with PHP or whatever. But it's really not that bad. It's now reusable, copy, paste, here we go. I've done it now. It's nice. So that is pagination. You do get in the weeds with a database query, but nowadays with AI, it's just so nice because you can really do a lot with queries. I never imagined before. I just wasn't that good at queries. I would rest on the ORM, but now I'm seeing it's getting different now with the AI stuff. All right. So now we want to be able to get an article. And so if we make another webhook, now you could, actually let me delete that because I'll show you this. You could just copy this guy so you can just duplicate it. And this is where this stuff gets really cool is because like if you look in your clipboard, all that is just a bunch of JSON. And then if you were to dump this out, it's just a bunch of JSON in that file. You start to really get the sense of how easy it is to move this stuff around when it's just JSON, right? In this case, I'm just going to copy this one here, and let me give this a name, article index. Okay. And then this one will be, we'll call this get, create, read. So this will be rate, create, read, update, delete. Yeah, this will be read. So we want to get one article, and we'll do the ID. So we're going to set the articles, and we're going to give it an ID. We have our header auth. It is a get, and that's about it. Now we want to not use this data, so we're going to put it into test mode again. Oops, let me go grab this. Put it into test mode. Unpin the data because we're okay with that. And then we'll go over to our test, and we'll say get article. So let's do a new one. HTTP, we'll do that, and we'll call it get article. All right, so now we're gonna do the authorization, which I could start inheriting. Let me start setting up things nice. Bearer token, and I think it was just foobar, and then we can say, it doesn't always work though, that's why I tend to avoid it. And then we're going to say get, and we want to get article, I think just 4. We'll go for 4. And I think I could leave the ID there. I think I can go here and do ID 4. Okay. Workflow could not be started. So it's test, and it probably, because I took so long, it shut down, or I'd shut it down to get the URL. And okay, so we have a 500 error. Fine. Like, this is the point. We can build through this. We can use this to our advantage. Okay. So let's go look at this. No response webhook was found. Yeah, so this happens a lot. I copied it over. I forgot to fix this. I could set it to immediately, set it to listen again. Notice how I don't have to click save every time. And now we got that. Oh, authorization is missing. This is why I don't like inheriting. Let me save it and see if that does it. No, it's still missing. I don't know why it does that. So I'm just going to go foobar. All right. We got that. We can pin it for a moment. Okay. So now we have our pin data, and it's going to be the parameter ID. And then I'm going to say, okay, now, what if, let's do this first. Let's go duplicate this. Again, we'll have to fix it, but why? Let's just save us a moment. And I could start naming these. It's not a bad thing, especially when things get more complicated, right? But whatever. Now we're going to say select. We're going to say we just want 1. And our condition is going to be ID equals this guy. Okay. So now when that comes in, now sometimes, oh yeah, we want to unpin that because we copied it. Now, we want to return that, and let's do another to do here, 404. We'll cover that in a moment. So we want to get it and then return it. So now let's just do this, duplicate, move that over there, and we're going to say return to under success, and we're going to tell this guy to make sure to go through to the end. Okay, so now we have our 200 not found. Why? Because it's still on test, isn't running because I didn't set it to listen, and now we have it. So this is great, but what if it wasn't found? Let's do that one really quick. All right, so we're going to do if statement here, if, and we're going to say if empty. So if, we could even just copy this over. If it's a number is empty. Oops, didn't mean to do that. We'll say if it's not empty. Add a condition, and that should be good. Okay, if exists, we'll call it true, then we want to go to our webhook response. And if it's not true, we still want to go to our webhook response. But what we want to do is just say 400. Oh wait, 404 is not found. And I think that's it. We don't really need to do much else. Okay. So now if we were to go back and save that and go back to our ID Postman, and we were to say, where are you, parameters, 400, we should get a 404. That easy. And we can send that back to 4. Okay. So now we have our CRUD with article and pagination. Now, how do we create an article? So let's give ourselves some room and keep going down this list. Now, creating an article has validation, and that's an easy one as well. We'll come back to that now. So we want to first make it so that they can, usually a create is a post. So we're going to do a post. So let's duplicate this. And we will unpin that data because it's going to ask us anyways. We're going to turn this to a post. And then we're going to say articles create. And then it's a course. It has a respond to webhook. Now we don't want to wait and do all that. So let's just do that for a moment. I'm going to grab the test URL and run this guy. And then we will duplicate that. Create article. And now we're talking post. We'll paste that in there, and we have our normal process here of body raw. Okay, and that would be, we want a title, and that title would be foobar, and then we want a body, some article, and then we want a, I think I called it status, published. So it's just published. Okay, published, false. And that actually reminds me, let's go back for a moment and do something. Let me first post this and save our data. Let me go back to this guy, and just a reminder how easy this stuff becomes. Now again, after your project is done and you make your next one, you can copy a lot of this over so it gets easier and easier. In this case, I want to say, hey, we only want, for example, we only want things that are published. So I think it would be true. I think that should work. Oh, sorry. Okay, it's pinned here. I ran it in there. When I ran it, oops, sorry, let me stop this trigger from running. Again, this is good, you see this. Let me run it right here, it tries again. So this is where it can be a little tricky. So sometimes N8N gets in this weird moment where it thinks you have to run the one before it. So let's run it, and now we see the line is purple. So it sent our pin data to here, and now this guy should run without waiting for the other one. When I ran it when it was open, it sometimes triggers the one before it. It's just a weird gotcha. But now we see that it will only return true. But yeah, okay. So now if we go to here, this isn't read one, this is going to be create, okay? We will then take that data, which we've pinned, and we will then create it. So again, I'm going to duplicate this and duplicate and do that and give it a new name, create record, insert, not insert or update, though that would be interesting. I don't know if I could do that and share it, but then I'll get rid of that guy, and then we'll give it a title, we'll give it a body, and we'll give it a, I think the created at and updated at will just go on its own. Now I don't want to check that. I want to do an expression, and I want to drag that over. Oops, I think, okay. Okay, so now we want our results here. So let's go here and duplicate that. And then we'll do a validation, one moment. So I think, yeah, that should be okay. I think that's where we want, like 201 was created. All right, let's see what happens. Yeah, it should be, everything's all set. Okay, so I made sure I saved it. And we have an error. Okay, good. So let's see, if we go here and here, we go to pass execution, we see our error. And we can click that open and work. Oh, I forgot to move that back. You see me do this a couple of times here. Oops, let's go to editor. And I forgot to do this, just to make sure it goes all the way through. That's all. Again, cloning or copying is great. You can just get going quickly, but sometimes you forget to remove things or add things back. Okay. Then we send it, and boom, we've now created our article. Now let's add validation. Let's see here. Oh, what was that ID on that guy? That would be 11. Okay. Let's go over here for a moment, and let's say if basically, yeah, there it is. Okay. If true, so if that string is not empty, and add a condition if that string is not empty, then we're good. If valid. So now if we're not valid, we're going to do something, but we can make it better. So let's go, we're not valid, so let's go copy this guy. So I don't even have to click on the menu. I can just click it and click Control V, Control C. So this would be not a 404. I think it's, what is the HTTP status for? I think it's 302, not valid. 422? Okay. I thought it was something else. That was like 405. Okay, but anyways, we can look that up later. So now we're going to say, if it's false, we're going to say 422, but I want to say something to the user. I want to say errors, and then I want to say something. I want to get this to be good. I want to say title is required. Body? I forget what we call that one. Body. Body is required. I think I have this wrong, sorry. It's an array of objects. Okay. So now we can send that back to the user of the API. And again, the nice thing about using Postman is we can actually output this as a documentation. So it'd be nice in the end. Okay. So we have our body, and I'm going to remove this and send it. We have 4.4, but I want it to be smarter than that, right? And you could get pretty extreme, right? But I would like it to be able to say which one is missing. And I don't know how much time I want to waste on that because it's such a simple CRUD. But you could basically, yeah, that's an interesting one. So basically, can we get an expression working? Yeah, it's not working there. It's so weird. I should report that, or it's just my setup. We basically, ideally, would like to do that. So let's do this. I'm going to do something here. One moment. I'm going to ask ChatGPT. But it's how you ask the question. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, let's do it. I typically use Claude. ChatGPT tends to handle this stuff a little bit better for N8N. Let's do this. Okay. I want to give it enough context. And I think... let's give it a try. I think that should be enough. Let's see what happens. So what I'm assuming to do, and I told it what to do, but it might not be the best idea, is I'm just going to have it do that. And it's not always right with this. So let's see here. Now I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to a pass execution where we had the error. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to copy this one into the editor. This is the one we sent a moment ago, which had an error, validation error. And so we get to see that line right there. So now I can immediately open up this guy here and have the last request right there. It's just a nice quick shortcut. And now when I run this, I should be able to see it didn't work. Because again, it's never, this code thing is amazing, but it can take a moment to get it right. So let's see. I'm going to say if valid. I'm going to say, I'm going to just say first. I'm going to say body. First JSON. First JSON body. It's so weird. It's being very weird today. Like it's all day. Just being very weird right now. And JSON item. Now let's do something here. Let's dig in this together. I was going to pre-cook all of this. I'm glad I didn't. So I'm going to say console.log request, and then I'll say this. Okay. So we see our console log, and we see the JSON, and we have a body. So that should work. So let's say first dot body, and let's just grab our thing up there so we can keep building from up there. Put data. Okay. And let's clear this out. And let's see here. Console log input data. So it's getting further now, but now it's having trouble down there. So what I'm going to do is just pound this out for a moment. And I'll say return foo bar. Okay, so let's do that. So console log request input data. So we want to output that into the console log. Easy peasy, but it's not showing up. So let's go find out. There we go. So JSON, that's why, because it was empty. So you think that would give me the body. There we go. Okay, so I thought I could have sworn I did that already. JSON body. Now, let's get back in business here. So if we run that one, we see title and nothing else. Okay. So then you could really get into the JavaScript stuff here. And again, it's just one function. It is some code. It is a lot less code. It's just JavaScript. You know, ChatGPT can pump it out for you. If not input data title or not input data term equals that, title is required. If not input data, let's just run it. And we just want to return errors. There we go. There's a lot of things there, so we got to figure out why. So we want to return errors. I don't know if I want it in the body. Oh yeah, that means that. Okay. So we returned our errors, but let's do this. Let's do an object called errors. And we'll say errors that. Okay. Errors array body. Okay. Let's go over here, and I think then we can just return it. It should look good. All right. And then we get rid of that. Error in the workflow. Good, good. Sure looked good here, but it didn't work there. All right, let's go find out why. And now let's do this. We're going to debug this in our editor, unpin some stuff. We see the error, and now we go through it. All right. Yeah, body trim. I thought though, that's interesting. Body input data, body trim. I am no JavaScript expert, not even close. But I think that should do it. Again, I will throw it in ChatGPT. If not, yeah, that worked. Okay, we have validation. We have all that stuff in place, and we can just now, that's done. So let's see, create article with validation. All right, we want to update the article. All right. So now we just take that article. Let's take all of these and go boom, boom. And we're going to say update. Update is usually put. And so we're going to call this, you don't need to really do all the create and everything. I'm just doing that for no good reason really, but I'll do it here as well. Typically you would just let the verb be this. We'll respond to the end, and we have our update ID. Let's copy that over. It's now a put. Let's go to our CRUD. And we are going to duplicate that. And then update article. And we're going to copy that new thing over. And we have our ID of 11 because we did do that before. And then we're going to say, what's your parameter? No, what's your body? Oops, what's your body? And we're going to say foobar 2 in true. All right. So when we send this over, we want it to update. We could send it here as a test. So let's do that. Let's go listen for it and send it. And is not registered. So it's in test mode. So let me stop listening. And maybe I forgot to update that, but this is test mode. And this is here. Yeah, that's interesting. The requested webhook. So I'm it's in test. So let's go listen again. Send it over. Oops. I didn't mean to click on that. Hold on a moment. So it says 404. The requested webhook is not registered. Click the test workflow button, which we've done already. So let's go back to here and click save. And then come back up to here and stop listening and start listening again. No, sorry. Update again. Stupid. I shouldn't even do that. Let's just do ID. And then let's put this to a put. And yeah, I would love to, wish I could talk to the people there and just out of curiosity see why it does that sometimes. Maybe if I move this to its own workflow, would I get that nice clean URL? Yeah, that'd be interesting to find out. But okay, let's go back to the real problem though. It's a post and not a put. So now if I run this in test mode, it will work. Oops, let me go grab the URL. We want test mode. Yep. And then we want to listen. And then we want to run it. All right. So Postman will get stuck sometimes. Just cancel it out. But we know it came through because I saw the thing go down. And now we have our put request with the updates. So now we could leave our validation there, but it might not matter. The validation here would be like what we did before in the get. If it exists, if it doesn't exist. So we could basically say get a record. Let's see, update or create. Now, I've never used this. It's interesting. It could work out for this to save us a little bit of time. But we're going to say, hey, when the ID matches, go update it. And so here's that. And then here's that. I want to see what it does, though, when there is no ID. We're going to find out in a moment. Let's change that back to that. And do that. Okay, and we can do that. And this guy, I think this just happens in N8N. Sorry, in Postgres. I think there's a trigger in there already, so I don't have to really worry about that. Yeah, we don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. We're going to go grab the other ones. Okay. So now we have update, and let's go see it work. I think this one is just that. Okay. I think the proper code for this would be 220. I can't remember. 204. Maybe. I didn't really read it that much. Okay. So now that's it. We have our put, our create. All right, so now when I run that, let's turn off the test and give it a go. Now let's go back to our list, update, shape the content, tagging data. Okay, we want to delete. That's an easy one, obviously. And you start to get into permissions in ACL. There's a lot of ways to do that. The particular token they use, just who they are when they're logged in with that token, because you're not necessarily sharing state with the applications. And so you could attach permissions to their particular token, their authentication token, and you can pass in more information about them. When you're doing JavaScript applications that have a backend, it's a lot easier to do that. So we're assuming that in this case. If you're doing a single page application where you're passing through like JWT session stuff, it's beyond what I could even teach here because I don't know all the technical stuff. Okay, so in this case, we're going to have someone delete. So let's go that, and we're going to say delete and delete article, and then let's go see what name it gets. And let's see, duplicate. Oops, I don't think. Yeah, it did work. I didn't mean to do that. That was a Control D, and then it randomly shows up somewhere again. Nothing's perfect, whether you pay for it or it's free. So we're going to call this delete. And we're going to make this a delete. And then we'll just say delete, not that it matters. And then we have our header and our course and response. Okay. And then we can just rename this guy because I just like to do that. Delete record. And we will say delete. Here we go. And command truncate delete. Oh, you can truncate a whole table. That's scary. And then we're going to pass that. All right. So sometimes the schema view gives you not only something that's more draggable, but it also tells you if it's a text or object or a number. But yeah, that can be handy. Okay, so we have that and that. And I don't know the status code for delete. HTTP status code for delete. Geez, 204 again. I'll just do 204. Not too worried about that. Okay, and that's it. So that will delete article 11, delete, and we'll get it out of test mode because we just are going to believe in it. We're going to do that, and then we're going to grab production and throw that in there, and that should be it. We've deleted it, 204. You could respond with it deleted. I don't know. Doesn't matter. All right. We can see CRUD started. You can obviously make it better. Let's dig into these last three. So whenever a record is added to the database, you could run something based off the event it triggers in Supabase or Postgres, or there's a lot of ways to do it. A scheduled task that looks for new content. If I was to do this in Supabase, I would just use the Supabase events. In this case, when we create a record, what we're going to do is just tag it really quick. Okay, let's show that working. Basically, we're going to say, hey, AI agent. Yeah, I'll do the agent. Doesn't really matter. Let me just do a basic LLM. And we're just going to say, hey, when this data comes in from this other area, so I'm going to open up this button here, and I get to see all the other data coming in. And the one we care about is the content that was sent in, body, title, published. So this one, we might need a little bit more example data. So let's give this thing a little bit more body. So let's see something really quick, because that's left over from a validation rule, but I need some content. Give me a, let's see what happens. Now the tricky part here is JSON. We'll cover that in a moment. No, geez. Into Postman. That's cool. Let's see. So we're gonna go into create mode. Now I could just edit it and throw it right there. Let's just do that. That's nice and easy. So I'm gonna go right here and paste that in and end it off with a comma. All right, so we don't even have to send it over, which is really cool. So now when that comes in, we have our create, and then we just run it so we can see our purple line here. And we have an if statement so we know it's valid, and that should go green. And then we could create the record, which is fine, so that's green. And then we could even pin that so we don't have to do that again. And we respond to the webhook, which I don't think matters right now. Obviously, we're going to see it work in the UI in a moment, and then we're going to do this. Now, at this point, so I don't want to have to run this again. Okay, at this point, we want to do a model. So I'm going to use Grok. I think Grok, Grok doesn't always work for structured data. Let's see if it does. And then I would say, hey, I want some structured data here. And the type of structured data I want is just a list. So I think we could do this. Yeah, let's just see what happens. And then we're going to say, you know what? Here's your content. And I'm going to add a system prompt. And your role is to 1, 2, 3 tags out of this data. And we'll give it a run. I'm not going to press this run because sometimes it restarts things. Let's do it, and then we'll see if it does it. It didn't. Okay, cool. N8N said, okay, let's do it this way so we can actually see this. So, okay, Grok, it didn't use the structured data, which was interesting. Don't know why. Maybe I didn't do that right. One moment. Usually I use this guy here. Let's just use this one. And we just will say tags, foo. So we're going to give it an example, which hopefully it won't use, which I've seen it do before. And we're going to run that again. There, now we forced it to do structured output. We made it do something like that, so it should consistently do that. That's a big deal, and that's Grok. It's not always that good at that. Now we want to loop over that data, I think, because again, it's weird because it's not really where we think it is. One moment, let's do this. And this will make sense in a moment. So the data is here. So we want to take that data, we want to take that data and output it. So now we have an array. And then I want it to be loopable, and it still isn't. This can be tricky, honestly. So we want to add this to the database. So if I was to go here, let's just do it so you can see what I'm working on. If I was to go here and say insert rows in table, that's nice. Maybe it will do it. So we want to add course, and we want to insert rows in a table. Yeah, maybe it will just work. Let's see what happens. So one of the things that I'm still learning is N8N has a bit of a magic iterator here, so it could basically just iterate over it. And so what we want to do is say, hey, we want to give it the webhook tag, and then we want to add the output. See, that is interesting. Let's see. I don't know what it's going to do because it's not the tag, you see? It's an array of tags. And then we don't need that. So that's not going to work because I don't want that. I want it to be an array of tags. So yeah, that's where it's going to magically iterate over them, but not give me what I want. So when I run that, I just created this thing that doesn't make sense to me. So I want to iterate over this 3 times. So let's move this out of the way. And we're going to do a split on that. Maybe that will get us going. And then that split will be right here. And we do this. And then we're going to loop over those 3 items. See how this can be a little tricky. And I'm doing it not as a pre-cooked thing because I just want to let you guys see me struggle and figure things out. Being an expert doesn't mean you've done everything and know how to do everything perfectly, in my opinion. It means you basically know what questions to ask in the gist of the how things can possibly get done and when you should look for better ways or solve it in the proper way. But we'll never be perfect at this stuff. So now we have our green and we have our green, but I don't think I've done this one. And let me get rid of this loop so we don't go through it. So we have our one item, and then we want to take the article ID, and then we want to take our loop over. So this is what we want. That is what we want. So let's go into our database for a moment and look at our tags and get rid of that one. Okay, cool. And then we are going to loop over this, and then we are going to, basically, that's it. We could run this 3 times and watch it loop over. But let's see. I think with this one, if I trigger it from here, I would like to see it go all the way through, but we don't need to right now. Let's go shoot an article over. Let's go see. And I think create this article. I think we have that in our, let me go grab it from ChatGPT. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, here we go. And then we just go here, and then we just give that a comma, and that's it. Okay, so now the goal is, hey, I want to make some tags. So let's click save. So the user doesn't have to wait for the results. So let's see, I must have forgot something. Here we go. And we've made the article. It got back right away, but then it should have ran the tag thing after if I have this right. Again, you would do it typically from an event, but you can cheat here and say to the person, here's your results, but I'm going to keep going and working. So it's like a cheat. You could even reach out to an external workflow and trigger it there because it doesn't have to wait. So there's a lot you can do. Ideally, you would do an event. Now let's go look in our table. And there we go. We have 3 tags. That's it. So now when we go, what was that? Article 14, 15. When we go get article 15, so let's go back to our editor. And when we get an article, see, when we get a record, if it exists, let's do one more get here. I know we could do this in one query, but just for a moment. Actually, I guess I could. Yeah, it'd be easier. Let me just do that. Oh, so we'd have to do a raw query, which is fine. I won't do it right now, though, because I want to just not get distracted yet again. We're going to go get tags, public, wrong one. Tags, limit 5, we'll say, and we'll have a condition where the article ID, so I'm going to say here, I'm going to click this, but it's empty. So if I do this and then click it, we get the sidebar here. So just remember if you don't see the sidebar. And then the article ID is this one. Yep, that one. So then we should be able to do that. Oh, see, and I ran it from there, so I lose some of my history. One moment. See, now it's trying to run the workflow. All right, so I didn't want to do it that way. I'm going to run this. Oops. It's being stubborn. Let's see if I can go all the way through this without having to rerun everything. Yeah, I'll have to run it. Okay, let's just do it. What is this? I don't need to do test. I'm going to send a request for 15. Get an article, and we're going to do 15. 15, and let's give it a send, and there we go. And then I want to go back into those executions and go here and then move it into the editor for a moment. Then we have the 15. And we have our select. I'll pin that to you just for a moment, just so we don't have to do that again. And then we say if exist, and we know it does. And then this guy. So this guy runs, and it gets 3 tags, which is what we want. All right. And I probably will cut out some of that because that was pretty suffering. Tags is actually 3 things. And I think like before, I wanted to take those 3 and aggregate them into 1. And so I take them and aggregate them into 1. And then I use the edit field to then say, okay, I want to make this data shaped a certain way. And I want to take those tags and move them over here. And I want to take the get record and move it down here as data. And then we get the payload that I think is more normal. And then this guy just returns everything. Now, again, I cut out a bit of this, but one and done. Like now I know how to do this over and over again if I'm making more CRUD. And I can actually put the tags in here, so we could come back and do that, but I think I've had enough fun with that. So let's see. So basically we have the shaping, the tagging, the shaping. We can see that in the point to that would be the structured data. We manipulate the data with this edit field in this, where we can take the edit field and map the particular incoming data to what we want. But this got a little bit tricky when I needed to do like this guy, because I can't drag this over, right? I can't drag that whole thing over. So at that point I had to do data, object, and then I had to go into expression mode. Even if I pop that open, it won't work. And then I had to type, and it fills it in for me. Let's see if we can get into that mode. So I want to get the record, and then I want to say I want to get the item, and there's the object. We're ready to go. I think I need to do item.json. I can't remember. But so you can manipulate the data or mess with it more as needed by doing the edit field. So you can then take it and move it into data, tags, whatever else you need to do. All right, so that was an hour and 18 minutes of filming that you're not going to see all of that, but I suffered through things that will be easier next time, copy paste next time. Now the system's just there and I have all my execution history as requests start coming in. I can copy paste it right into staging to production. Then we can leave staging alone and make tweaks there and copy them over. Migrations is a pattern I haven't addressed yet. I'll talk about that later on. We get into production deployments from staging. Just some patterns there like migrations, because you don't want to do all your migrations by hand. So that is something we will solve by the time we get there. And yeah, this is a good example of a simple CRUD. You saw a lot of the quirks. You saw a lot of the ways you use pin data. So there's a lot covered there. Hopefully you see, though, that with a little bit of experience and just getting your hands dirty in this, it starts to make sense what you can do easily. We even threw an AI agent, or not an agent, a basic chain to just do some structured output, which is nice. You could do that. I don't even know if you could do it with Grok without laying chain. So, I mean, you can see when you saw how fast that was because it's Grok with a Q.